Redditors. Instead of Twitter, what could Elon Musk have bought for $44 billion? $1 billion would get him the entire Motown copyright catalog, which actually would make him money. He'd find a way to fuck it up. He'd rename it X-Town. You can buy approximately 698 F-16 jets with $44 billion. Melt them down and build one F-16 that's 698 times larger than a regular F-16. F-16 Pro Max. Ah yes, the rare F-11,168, terror of the skies. Probably the name of his next kid. He could have rebuilt Atlantis and then sunk it again like he's Zeus. Power of the gods is the OG boss move. Nah, he would have rebranded himself to Thor halfway through, then lash out when people point out that Thor is Norse and Atlantis is Greek. Then he'd get into a legal battle with Disney because he used a Thor outfit based on Marvel's depiction. Finally, he would have built the whole thing somewhere in a desert cause the land was cheap, only to find the cost of keeping it underwater, watertight, topped up from evaporation cost more than the savings from doing it in the desert to begin with. So he would then downgrade it to a 1-mile diameter birthing pool for the next child, an AMP, PSCCSS, that he has with Grimes. Elon is feverishly taking notes of this thread. He could have bought a 2-bedroom bungalow in Vancouver. It's $44 billion in USD, so maybe a 3-bedroom. A fleet of 4,400 M1A2 Abrams tanks, apparently. OP here, my personal theory is if he planned it well enough and moved quietly enough, he could have purchased all of Rhode Island. But then he'd own Rhode Island. You mean then he'd own X? Rhode Island is surely getting the same unimaginative rebrand. He'd own X Island, which is slightly less NSFW than Epstein's Exit X Island, and just a bit smaller than Apple's X Pro Max Island. 0.142% of the US national debt. Holy shit, that puts things in perspective. My brain can't comprehend trillions. How the fuck can you be 33 trillion in debt? And to whom? It's not hard to be in massive debt if you are owing the money mostly to yourself. And you've been consistently borrowing money from yourself for over 200 years, and also printing it yourself. Easy to pay off too when you own the machines that print the dollars. That works until it doesn't. Except we've only been heavily borrowing from ourselves since Reagan. Almost all of the US debt is owed to itself, either via government bonds that are largely held by the public in various investments, or intergovernmental debt. For example, the Department of the Treasury owes the Department of Agriculture. Even the small fraction of debt held by foreign countries is mostly held by allies such as Canada and Japan. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm a lawyer with an economics degree, and I personally fall under the school of thought that national debt is just a completely different type of debt than the average person is used to thinking about, and it's pretty fucking hard to have too much of it as long as it's taken when interest rates are low, denominated in your own currency, refinanced when possible, used for public works projects like infrastructure that generate good economic returns, and you have nuclear weapons. Under those circumstances, which describes most of the US debt, you can kinda just let the money machine go brrr. He bought Twitter for $44 billion, fucking idiot. I downloaded it for free. A really cool boat. At least 3 Supreme Court justices. He could have done what billionaires of the past did and built beautiful libraries, public baths, monuments, bridges, schools, etc., that everyone can use and admire for free forever, with his name on it, that we chip off after he dies. And he'd still have enough to buy Twitter for the amount it was actually worth. I grew up a block away from my Carnegie Library. It was one of the most beautiful buildings in town, and filled to the ceiling with books. A lot of good memories there. Why don't we make landmarks anymore? It's all just ugly buildings with no features. We need cool architecture like how the old churches, monuments, and cathedrals were, and that shit lasts centuries too. Because the rich care only about their own dragon hordes and rarely about art, culture, or public benefit. Also, I would imagine the proportional cost of construction has skyrocketed since all those old landmarks were built. Unfortunately, he doesn't care about humans or the world like he has convinced so many. Instead, he just strokes his own ego. I've seen him talk about what it would take to give the entire US renewable energy for life. He could have used the money to build that and been the #1 energy supplier for the entire country, which would make him way more money. Instead, he goes on Twitter telling us all to have more kids, when most of us can't even afford housing, food, etc. The most frustrating thing is when billionaire CEOs like him make such a big fuss about people not having kids. Then you look at the policies they have at their own businesses that makes it impossible for their own employees to start a family. They're either vastly underpaid or given no work-life balance, encouraged to sleep at the office, etc. As usual, the billionaires want someone else to address the problem so they can personally profit from it. He could have bought a train that isn't restricted to train tracks like a hover train, and paid the best special effects people to deck it all out like an absolutely giant centipede, with robotic tentacles and big-ass pincers and long-ass antennas, and then just driven it all over the place, causing absolute chaos and pandemonium everywhere. That's like 1 billion. He could break even selling seats to other rich people to sit inside in their bowler hats and cackle and rub their hands gleefully, as they do. Then he could spend another 1 billion coming up with the way to kill the giant centipede, sell it for profit, and come out a hero, with tens of billions left to further fuck with people in a fun, victimless way like that. Wealth is wasted on the rich. A train that isn't restricted to train tracks. You mean a bus? The mental health treatment he desperately needs. $44 billion wouldn't even scratch the surface of that mess. He could have bought 880 billion gumballs and chewed them all into one giant wad of gum. The latest stories suggest that Musk threatened to sue Warner Brothers if they fired Amber Heard. He could have just bought Warner Brothers for $26 billion and used the other $18 billion to make his own MCU, Musk Cinematic Universe, all about how great he is. As terrible as it sounds, it probably still would have lost him money at a slower rate than Twitter has. Building around 4,400 new public schools or 4.4 million new MRI machines. Musk supposedly is a techno-transhumanist, though I forget what the more accurate phrase is supposed to be. That is, his only ethics is supposed to be to advancing technology enough to get humans settling other planets. The thing is, rather than accumulating money and starting pissing contests with the world's mega-wealthy, if Elon really wants to get humanity off the planet as quickly generational-wise as possible, he needs to stop ignoring the poor man's plight. A well-fed and well-educated population will advance technology far quicker than whatever he thinks he can do alone. How many truly great scientists and innovators never realize their potential because they never got a chance in school or life? I ask you all to take 2 minutes and Google this Musk Twitter Erdogan and Musk Modi Twitter. You will get a perfect screenshot timeline into what $44 billion is already getting in return for Musk, his foreign investors, and their business interests. He is leveraging control of info through Twitter on behalf of autocratic kleptocracies in exchange for massive monopolistic business opportunities, zero regulations in these countries. India investing in supporting Tesla SpaceX alone would be worth far more than what was paid for Twitter. He will be using these relationships to do Neuralink trials on prisoners in these countries as well. Musk has an empire to build, and Ronan Farrow already wrote a good piece in WAPO on the US Gov's over-reliance on Musk in regards to SpaceX Starlink. Twitter is another point of control, and helping install a Trump regime would give Musk and Twitter investors carte blanche in the US as well. There are no other viable global info platforms available right now, and 2024 will see major chaos leading up to, during, and after our elections. We need to assign concrete motivations to Musk, like we did with Trump after too many years. His actions are deliberate and are a major threat to finishing off our democracy if we continue to downplay his grander motivation and goals and frame him as flailing and overnight red-pilled. Twitter is a success in terms of why Musk and company purchased it. Let's recognize this and call it out now, and hopefully figure out building a new centralized info platform for 2024 because we will need it. It may already be too late. Don't forget all his Saudi investors, Saudis and others we will never likely know about. I will add that for all the pundits saying Musk will go broke on this transaction, or that the banks will seize it, or something else to that effect. No, Twitter is bankrolled by entities with trillions in assets. Saudis alone, Saudi Aramco is worth multi-trillions, can buy Twitter like a toy, and yet it is for all intents and purposes has been and still is our global town square. The public value of Twitter was never properly recognized because it wasn't a moneymaker in the traditional Silicon Valley sense. Too many CNBC types have framed this transaction in this way, which misses the much bigger picture we are seeing play out before us. If you made it to the end of the video, tap the like button and hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button to be notified of our next upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.